Imagine you and some of your friends are out of town for the night. Suddenly, you turn the corner to see a massive swarm of people. They're dressed in black, wearing facial masks, and are blocking the street just up ahead. As you start to approach this massive crowd, your mind races with questions like, what are they doing here blocking the street? Then, you see some bystanders, like yourself, being confronted at the distance. When you try to go around the group peacefully, you're confronted face to face by one of them. And within seconds, they have managed to get you and your party face down onto the asphalt. As you try to get up, they start to frenzy, pummeling you and your friends on all sides, back down onto the ground. Eventually, you gain the strength to crawl away, until finally they get bored and go back to blocking the street. When you and your party manage a far enough distance from the mob, you try to regain focus, turning to your friend to immediately call 911. Before you can fully regain your balance, you pass out due to the Antifa's brutal beating. The next day, when you wake up, the doctor walks in and tells you you are going to need to have an extensive facial reconstructive surgery to repair the bone structure. As your doctor starts to go into detail, you gaze off and notice the TV in the corner of the room broadcasting the situation you and your friends just endured a couple of days ago. The news caption reads, "Protests turned violent, leaving 3 people dead and dozens more injured." Struggling to cope with all this new information, you begin to question as to why all this is happening. Good afternoon. I'm Suzanne Bishop from the Lowndes High School FFA chapter. Unfortunately, situations like I just described are currently happening in our country. These events took a drastic uptick with the riots that began this past May. These widespread riots were ignited by the tragic death of George Floyd. Peaceful protests often turn violent with instigation driven by Antifa members, leaving a trail of mass destruction to follow for months to come. These widespread riots are now ongoing and are usually spurred by conflict with the law enforcement personnel. While some protests were peaceful, most were not, creating problems from New York to Los Angeles and Miami to Seattle. These large-scale violent protests sadly caused multiple casualties. Just in Minneapolis alone, over hundreds of businesses were destroyed, with an estimated cost that is said to exceed $500 million. Today, I'm going to share how this violent movement connects back to the agricultural world. Antifa is short for anti-fascist. This term is used to define a broad group of people whose political beliefs lean far to the left and are in the practice of harassing conservatives both online and physically. They accomplish online harassment via hacking and doxing. Undercover sources have determined that they are trained to use a variety of weapons, including concrete-filled milkshakes, urine-filled balloons, bricks, crowbars, and even more. The platform of Antifa follows the concept of socialism. Socialism is the political and economic idea which holds that businesses should be owned or regulated by the community and not by individuals. The Washington Examiner stated, some federal government employees are Antifa members and have been charged with violent acts. It goes on to say, the Democratic Party has new leaders in Congress that are openly embracing the label socialists. Socialists in Congress are pushing the New Green Deal, which is their plan to solve global warming, or rather climate change. This plan includes eliminating greenhouse gas emissions in the agricultural industry. Some scientists today claim that food production generates nearly 1/3 of all greenhouse gas emissions. Their reasoning behind this logic is their claim that farming harms the environment. Experts say the new Green Deal will be very costly. A former Congressional Budget Office director said the price may be as high as $93 trillion. Now, I'm not that good at math, so I searched it and found that trillion has 12 zeros, just to let you know so you don't get confused, because I wouldn't want that. What would the impact of the new Green Deal be on agriculture? An example can be found in the beef segment of the industry. States an article which says that under the new Green Deal, progressives in Congress are targeting the beef and dairy production. This is important because beef cattle production is in nearly all Georgia's counties, with a $3 billion annual economic impact. Approximately 15,000 farmers make it the state's most broad agricultural commodity. Cattle production is actually more eco-friendly than crop production, according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration. The administration went on to say, the energy consumed in livestock operations is direct energy consumption and is relatively low when compared with crop operations. While more often the case in states with less rainfall than Georgia, cattle are able to produce beef by grazing lands that are unfit for crop production. A less expensive option than the new Green Deal is to create simple incentives. A good example of this found in my hometown is the Langdale Company. Independent of government, more than a century ago, John Wesley Langdale planted the foundation of the Langdale Company with one crop of turpentine timber. Today, the Langdale Company remains one of the largest employers in the region, with the primary sawmill and timber operations in Valdosta. Other facilities include the OSB plant in Brooks County and the MDF and molding plants in Atkinson County. At one time, the Langdale Company held the largest privately owned acreage east of the Mississippi River. Independent of government policy, this local company has worked to help lessen the growth of climate change by planting more trees. A little over a decade ago, in the year 2009, they planted their 100th millionth seedling as a part of their forestry operations. Georgia farmers may not have the opportunity to feel the wrath of the black-hooded Antifa thugs in the largely progressive areas. However, if socialists in Congress had their way, this new Green Deal will cause a serious disruption to our way of life. Instead of radical and expensive changes to our way of life, I offer a common sense solution of simple incentives for farmers to take even greater care of the environment. These simple incentives will help aid in the positive impact to foresters and agriculturists for years to come and give us a better promise for our future. Thank you.